The government, through the Ministry of Trade and Industry, a few weeks ago in a press release instructed a temporary freeze the exportation of rice in the country. The ban came following the involvement of some national and foreign traders illegally smuggling huge quantity of rice from Sierra Leone, allegedly to Guinea and Liberia, through the country's porous border entry points. So this morning, to discuss the ban, among other things, we have the country's Minister of Trade and Industry, Engineer Edward Hinga Sandi. Engineer, good morning and welcome to Wake Up Service.
Good morning, Samuel. Good morning, madam.
First off, let's start off. So when we read the press release receiving the news that the ministry has banned the exportation of rice, people were confused. Oh, are we exporting rice now? So what was the status? Because we were aware that smuggling was taking place across the crossing points.
Well, Samuel, first, I must state that this government has worked very hard to ensure that even when we have this massive global economic problems, we try to ensure we build up stocks of essential commodities. That is what we've done for rice, we've done for petroleum products, and it has a cost. Government is helping importers with access to foreign exchange, to foreign currency, so that they can secure. I mean, with all of what is happening in the world, the Ukraine war, the economic war between a number of other countries, bigger economies, and what has happened with the exchange rate, the interest rate in the United States spike, which has resulted to the appreciation of the dollar against most of the currencies. You can even see how it has affected the euro, the UK pound. Of course, in Africa here, you see how it has impacted on the cedis in Ghana, the naira in Nigeria, of course, our Leone here. So when you have such uncertainties, you want to be careful what you do to ensure that the efforts you're making to keep the boat stable is actually achieved. So what we realized was, of course, most of for rice, which is an essential commodity, you realize that while COVID was on, while freight charges went up, while other countries pushed up the price globally for rice, as a country, what we tried to do was to still maintain the zero tax on rice. So what we're producing is not much. What is coming in could be re-exported. So Sierra Leone could just be used as a conduit. And the fact that when it comes to our shores, we don't take taxes, not even duty or GST. We want to be sure that, and we are using our hard-earned foreign currency to bring these goods into the country. I mean, and knowing the environment, you want to be sure that you are taking certain temporary actions to guarantee that our people, even though the prices are all our people have.
But just to be clear there, were we at any point exporting rice?
Well,
not the illegal smuggling now.
You have some quantities of rice, locally produced rice. I mean, the fact that our locally produced, especially the powder, the value is high. Some people think it's more nutritious than the imported rice. And the fact that there is cross-border trade between Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Guinea under the Mano River protocols. Of course, things are coming from Guinea, things are coming from Sierra Leone into Guinea, into Liberia. So it's been happening. Although not huge quantities, but it's been happening.
So the exportation of rice, let's look at how or what mechanisms have you put in place as a government or as a ministry to track that? Because, for example, if because we have the zero tax on rice importation, that could be used as a very fertile ground for people to import rice into the country and then export it again to other countries just so they avoid the taxes, because bringing it to Sierra Leone is virtually free. So what mechanisms have we put in place to avoid that?
Well, it doesn't make sense if rice comes into Sierra Leone and you try to re-export it. It's not actually export because it's not originating from Sierra Leone. It doesn't make sense because if you're taking a bag of rice or two across to Liberia from Sierra Leone, maybe by the time you get to the border crossing point, you'll not be taxed. But if you're taking large quantities, definitely when you get on the other side of Sierra Leone, you're definitely going to be taxed. And besides, for what we see happening, the fact that we're not taking taxes, we're looking at a regime whereby if you bring in imported rice here and you want to exit it, we're definitely going to impose the tax that we have waived. So that, I mean, it doesn't become an incentive. By any means, it's not helping Sierra Leone at all. If you want to take rice to Liberia, but you prefer to take it first into Sierra Leone before you take it to Liberia. So what we tried to do was actually as a way to guarantee our security in terms of the stock of rice that is in Sierra Leone. So it's a preventive action. It happens in every other country. I mean, the time India realized that there was so much export of rice from India and that was going to disturb food security there, they imposed bans on the export. They tried to control it. The same happened with Indonesia at one time. You know, they are known for export of palm oil. When it reached a point that so much palm oil was leaving Indonesia that it almost threatened their own food security, they had to impose some kind of tax or some even ban on the export of palm oil. So what we did was just a preemptive action. We needed to read through the figures to be sure that whatever is happening there, I mean, as a nation, we never had any official request from Liberia to support them with rice. It happened one time, they had issues with petroleum products, and we got an official request to support them. We had to do that, but in this case, there was no official request from the other side there. I mean, as developing nations, there is need for you to help each other. When the other goes into crisis, it happens during the war. We had Nigerian soldiers coming to Sierra Leone, Ghanaians coming. But if it's done officially, then I think we can sit in it. But when we see that there is a certain kind of trend that holds the potential to threaten our own food security, then you will see government would take certain temporary actions to try to curtail them.
With this ban in force now, what's the level of collaboration with other government agencies? Because for the longest of time, we've always talked about the porosity of our borders. So how do we get the security sector to help? Because they've always been there, and yet smuggling has been taking place. And the accusation sometimes that is that even the security personnel manning those border crossing points are part of those in the syndicate. So what is government putting in place to ensure that this ban is enforced?
Well, we're working collaboratively with the security forces, the ONS, the Sierra Leone police, even the military. That's why, and of course, the Customs Department, the NRA, to see what we do to help reduce. I mean, the United States, even with the tightest border security, still has smuggling taking place. So you cannot eliminate that completely. I mean, less to say, Sierra Leone with the magnitude of problems that you're attacking. If you go to some parts of the Sierra Leone-Guinea border, a house is built on the very border between the two countries. In fact, the front face of the house may be in Guinea and the back face of it would be in Sierra Leone here. So we have those challenges definitely. But when you are talking about smuggling at small levels, of course we also have our riverine communities around the Cambia area there. You realize that some kind of illicit trade is taking place here. The police will go there, the NRA will go there to try to see how we control what is happening. And people would have, of course, to be moving from one point to the other. But by and large, I'm sure when a very serious alarm like that comes, and you see the Minister of Trade asking that we put a temporary freeze on what is happening so that we understand how the figures are looking, I think everybody would want to treat it seriously.
Our economy obviously is not performing as well as perhaps the expectations of people, and when that conversation comes round, especially when it's tied to the Leone versus the US dollar, it's always attributed to the fact that we don't do much of exportation, which is what's affecting us. But in all of this, with all the players working in Sierra Leone's economy, what's the role of the Ministry of Trade and Industry?
Of course, it's huge. I mean, there is so much the Ministry of Trade is doing to ensure that we're able to be competitive among our peers in the sub-region, on the continent, and in the world. Of course, bad performing economies is not just with Sierra Leone. Even the United States is experiencing that kind of situation. You see what is happening in Ghana, how the cedi has really depreciated much more bad. In fact, it's known that it's the worst performing currency with all of what they've tried to do. What we're trying to do, for instance, over the years, we've had a very old industry policy that was not really speaking to anything. The Ministry of Trade has picked that up. We've done a review. We've called in consultants. We worked with other development partners, the UN, UNECA, that came in, supported the process, brought in exports, and we've done that review of the policy.
Which policy is that?
The industry policy.
Okay.
And we also have developed the special economic zone policy, which is going to see us demarcate areas for industry growth, just like every other country is trying to do now. We're not only doing that in response to some of the new markets that are opening up. We have seen the real need that if you really want to develop as a nation, you have to mainstream trade in your economic development. And this is what we have realized, and some of those activities that you've seen us put together are actually where the potentials are. They're going to create jobs. They're going to help us cut down on how much we are importing from other countries. They're going to help us do value addition to some of the raw materials we're doing. And as the special economic zone policy is going to be rolled out, we're looking at key competence areas in the country. We're looking at what we can do with our raw agricultural materials. So we're looking at agro-processing, we're looking at mineral beneficiation, and then we're looking at light manufacturing as we progress. Because these are all the activities that are actually going to help do the manufacturing of those goods that we normally go to buy from China, or we normally go to buy from Turkey, etc., etc.
Some economists argue that for our economy to do better than it's doing, we need to focus on exportation. Currently, what's Sierra Leone exporting, and what other sectors have a potential for exportation?
Well, you can be exporting. Sierra Leone has been exporting, but what we've been doing is low-value exports. I mean, if you take cacao to Europe as compared to taking chocolates to Europe, I mean, you are having different values for that. If you take raw palm oil to the United States as against you exporting the refined vegetable oil, or even the PFA that comes from the refinery of palm oil, or the stearin, which is used in confectionaries and in some cosmetics, you are exporting two different valued products. So what you're trying to really do is see what you now do with value addition to those exports. Instead of exporting your cacao as it is, you try to process it. Get factories that are going to be processing cacao into different products, high valued products, so that even when you're exporting 1 metric ton of something, it's a high valued 1 metric ton instead of exporting 10 metric tons.
And that's for not just the raw materials now, the finished products, but there are other sectors that you know, have the finished products ready. For example, the fashion industry. Aside from just exporting maybe a gara and country cloth, there are designers now who do fabulous designs that, you know, can be exported. There are people in even you know, furniture We have carpenters in Sierra Leone, we've seen, who create furniture that you look and you argue that this was not made in Sierra Leone, it's probably imported. There are all those industries, but there's a linkage between having such businesses in Sierra Leone, producing it, and then getting to that point of exporting them out of Sierra Leone. Where does the Ministry of Trade and Industry come in this?
Well, as the new markets develop, we have got a program we're looking at developing market linkage. In fact, what we've tried to do with agro-processing is actually support key small and medium enterprises that are actually doing well. We've supported them with grants and training and helping them with market linkages. I mean, you have the ECOWAS trade liberalization scheme, which allows African countries within West Africa to produce, manufacture, and be able to export to other West African countries duty-free, quota-free. We've been engaging with businesses to see how we can bring them on board that. You need to register for the ECOWAS certificate, and once you obtain that ECOWAS certificate, then you should be able to export to any West African countries. We should also try to endeavor, and that's what we've been doing in most of the meetings we go. We try to meet the private sector in other countries, introduce the products that are made in Sierra Leone. We should endeavor to see that we are able to create those market linkages. Your product only becomes marketable when people get to know about it. And when, in most cases, we go on some of this tour, once we have the opportunity to bring along some of these high-performing manufacturers, some of them do not even have that much capacity to follow us, but we try to take examples of what they're producing, specimen of what they're producing when we go for investment tours. We also are trying to see how we know that access to finance actually in Sierra Leone is a little bit challenging. You have the Afrexim Bank that is here to support manufacturers. Your business must be a viable one. They would assess it, and we have banks in Sierra Leone here that are actually middle banks between those who would want to access those funds provided by Afrexim Bank. Afrexim Bank is a bank that was created for supporting manufacturing companies in Africa to support the Continental Free Trade Agreement that we signed long ago in Niger. So they are here. A number of businesses are actually in the process of getting access to and the finance is huge. You can get anything between $1 million to as much as $50 million from that kind of engagement. So we would only encourage our businesses, those who are thriving, to also, we're encouraging them to be coming together. Because the way I see it, if you're a single man in the business, you may have all the capacity in some aspects, but if you choose to come together, if you are doing wood processing, 2-3 wood processors actually come together to develop one big factory, then you're going to see how you use the advantages of all those groups put together to really be able to enhance your business, not only with production. You have some people who are really very good at production, but they do not have the capacity to do marketing. So when you have those groups coming, and some are good at marketing, but their products are not really good. So when you come together into these units, businesses coming together, then you can see you can enhance your potential to be able to produce and sell and export to other countries. So this is what we're actually encouraging. And the special economic zone is one policy that is going to enhance manufacturing. It's going to see how we encourage these companies, these big companies coming together to form one big cluster.
So as you talk about these companies, Mr. Minister, I know for the longest of time in the recent past, when we talk about the Ministry of Trade and Industry, we've always just focused on trade, leaving the industrial part of it. So as we talk about what do we export, it starts with what do we produce. So at this stage, where are we in terms of industrialization?
I think we're doing well. Prior to even the development of the special economic zone policy and the review of the industry policy, of course, those policy frameworks are very, very important because they must contain certain things like incentives government gives to manufacturers that will encourage them to really go into manufacturing, Today you've seen that most of those companies that have been doing just import are now transitioning into manufacturing. Take Maki, for example. Maki has been bringing in cement in bags. Today he's doing a full-blown grinding factory for cement. You will see that one is the fact that we are trying to create that environment that will allow people to come into that space. But more so, we've been able to do things which is allowing them to come. For instance, we're doing agreements. We're not asking any business that's coming into Sierra Leone to give us 10% of their business share. I mean, some of those things, I mean, the burden which some public officials will place on some of these businesses is actually what sometimes we say, how can you just ask me to give you 10% of my business when you're not contributing anything? So we've seen that all of that has been eliminated during this regime. And that is why you've seen companies like Sol Cement that is operating in Angola, in Guinea, coming in here. We've done an agreement with them. It's going to cabinet very soon. That will be looking at also establishing a second big cement factory somewhere around Waterloo. And you have a number of other cement companies that are coming. Take a look at what we've done with the scrap metals. I mean, prior to this time, we've just been exporting. For you to have a big company coming in to say, I want to come and establish a recycling factory in the short term, and in the medium term, I will be looking at extracting the iron pigment from the iron ore, I think holds huge prospects for this country. And of course, what we've done with palm oil, good number of companies, small businesses are now growing palm oil. Suffering, which is the biggest, is there. And you have Gold Tree that's also doing well. In fact, Sierra Leone's palm oil has been noted as one of the best palm oil produced in the world. It's organic in nature, and people are even paying premium. So just the palm oil, without being processed, has high value compared to other palm oil produced in other countries because it's organic. We are not using fertilizer to grow most of the palm oil that we are producing in this country. So that's one market niche that we can also explore. So you're also seeing what is happening.
We can explore, but we're not exploring it. Why?
Exploring, and that's what I'm saying. Gold Tree is now exporting our organic palm oil into the Netherlands. Take a look at what is happening in Sumbuya, the pineapple farm that was done there. Government supported that company, Sierra Tropical Limited, to develop a pineapple processing factory right there in Sumbuya. For those who are normally saying, oh, electricity, 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 they knew what they were doing. And they tried to develop it there. They have no source to the national grid. And they are producing pineapple juice, they're producing pineapple bits. And as I'm speaking to you, they are currently exporting to the United States, to one of the big pizza producing, manufacturing companies in the United States. So you're seeing that we're making a lot of progress. You talk about the wood processing, the Chinese company that's here, the Sierra Leonean company that's in McKinney that is trying to process our wood into furniture, into almost finished slabs like this and exporting them. Those are high value finished slabs. You talk of Myro that is now doing a plywood factory in Mile 91. We supported them with an agreement which went to cabinet and to parliament, and they are in the process of constructing that plywood. If you're going to have Myro produce plywood in this country, I'm sure we're not going to import plywood anymore into this country. You talk of a number of other small factories that are coming up. Take a look at the ones that are in Sunbird, that is in Bombalé, that is producing ethanol. Today we're exporting ethanol. In fact, we've placed a certain excise duty on ethanol because of their production of ethanol. They're producing huge amounts of ethanol, which our local brewers are now using for the production of certain alcoholic beverages, and they're exporting to other African countries. So you're seeing the kind of trajectory that we're taking. I mean, I will not say we've done a whole lot, but you can see that there is prospect. And with the introduction of the special economic zone, and of course, the review of the industry policy, we're looking at what we can do as a broader incentive for all manufacturers who want to come into the space. Instead of you coming to the Ministry of Trade and then we do individual agreements, sometimes it's really difficult. But once we do the special economic zone, We look at the incentives that are going to be offered to anybody who's going to establish a factory in Sierra Leone. I'm very, very sure we're going to see more and more of this coming. But I think what we've been able to achieve, I think there is good reason for us to give a nod to some of the achievements that we've made. And once you see this government pushing with all of this, you realize that there is prospect. And you go also to Kenima for the first time. You have Sierra Capital Foods. They are now processing our cocoa into cacao liquor. Now the cacao liquor has more value than the ordinary cocoa beans. And they have started producing the cocoa powder, the chocolate, and they're putting it into different kinds. If you go to Kenma, it's there. So it's when you have, and of course they too, we're trying to develop an agreement for them. But when you see all of these things coming up, those who have been importing, now seeing the need to start doing manufacturing, you'll know that, oh, we should give credit. The environment is getting better. It's supporting manufacturing. The policy framework, the legislative, and even the political will is there. So I think with
just quickly, and I know we have to let you go, but just before we do so and take some messages, you know, looking at the economic crisis in Sierra Leone, and in fact, well, the rest of the world, but how it is affecting Sierra Leoneans. Today we'll tell you, oh, we do not export, so when you go to the market, because we import everything, every now and then people cry that what they would spend to buy a cup of rice today, you go tomorrow to the market, it's going to be different because of so many factors. So what are we doing as the Ministry of Trade to help cushion some of these effects in the market for Sierra Leoneans?
We're doing a lot. In fact, government has put together a committee called the Essential Goods and Services Committee, and it's chaired by no less a person but the Chief Minister. And the Secretary to President sits on that committee together with me, the Minister of Agriculture. You've seen what government is saying, that we'll focus on education in this first term. The next term, I mean, if I should borrow the words of His Excellency the President, we're now going to focus on agriculture. Agriculture holds the biggest potential. Once you have the raw materials produced in this country, you're definitely going to see more and more value addition factories coming up. So what we're trying to do to stabilize what we're doing is see how we continue to support importers who are bringing some of these essential commodities into the country. We're supporting them with Forex. The Bank of Sierra Leone has been very, very, very helpful. I mean, they've worked with the IMF and they're looking at how to bring in programs to make foreign currency available to our importers. And you also see them buying it at rates that are really good. You're also looking at what we're doing with a number of taxes that we've been able to remove on some of these essential commodities. Imagine we were able to remove GST on flour. And the other day I was at one of the factories that is trying to do the meal. In fact, if you take Sierra Leone flour meal, that's the other thing I would have to tell you. We met Sierra Leone flour meal at a death stage. We had to do an agreement with them. And now today, Sierra Leone flour mill has revived. You can now see the new construction that's going on. If you go to all those silos that you see coming up by Water Key, is the effort of what we've tried to do with Sierra Leone flour mill to revive them. And now we have Sonoko that's also coming in. And they've started with the mill at the Water Key as well. And they're doing the bakery equipment in Wellington. Yesterday I was at the facility. So with all of these things that we're doing, what we've tried to do is to expand on the public-private dialogue. Mm-hmm. There is now more confidence between government and the private sector. The engagements that we've been having. I mean, it's never a smooth engagement. Sometimes we quarrel, sometimes we're friends. But what that is doing is making us understand the challenges the private sector is facing and what government can actually come in to do to support them. And in the process, we also leverage and looking at how the prices, even though the prices are going up, I mean, when global prices start to go up, there is no way you can control it. Take a look at what happened with Ukraine alone, because Russia was restricting the supply of fertilizer. The price of fertilizer just went up, and today it's impacting. the price of fertilizer in Sierra Leone. So if you take a look at all of that, the only way a government would want, because government cannot do business, I can tell you this, you cannot replace the private sector. You can only create that environment to ensure that the private sector thrives. And when there's that dialogue, then you can see that you can bring them together to also look at what we can do, that nationalistic part of it. What can we do as importers to see how we ameliorate some of the challenges which our consumers are going through with prices? Because they themselves, the importers, know that if there were no consumers in Sierra Leone, their businesses were not going to exist. So I think with all of that, and with government coming in to spice the work that they're doing to support them, you see they too really care about what the businesses or what the consumers
in
are
as
feeling.
much as you do have sensible businessmen and women who have empathy for the public, you do have those who really do not care. And price control has been key in the conversation of Sierra Leone's economy. You would wake up today, something you bought probably 10,000 leones yesterday would now become 15,000 or 20,000. And you begin to wonder how things like even pepper, for example, that is locally, produced, locally grown in Sierra Leone, gets to fluctuate. And the argument is always that Sierra Leone operates in a free market economy. But what's Sierra Leone's policy on, pricing, price control? And at this point, as the Minister of Trade and Industry, do you see a need for an adjustment, for a review?
Well, there is something bigger than just price control that we've done. We've done the consumer protection law. We had challenges with government putting this institution together, but now we've already done that. The institution is coming live by the start of next year. So you see that what the consumer protection law is going to do, and of course the commission that's going to come up, is going to go beyond just price control. What we're talking about here is value for money. So the Consumer Protection Commission is going to ensure that we're looking at the prices of commodities and some of those things that are influencing these fluctuations. You may want to just blame it on the businesses alone, but if you have in a situation where the dollar is appreciating against the Leone, and today you're seeing that there is the exchange rate moving up, you definitely want to see reason why these importers, if the products are produced locally, okay, but when you see that all of them are going to buy, if you're not careful, you're going to likely sell the product far less than you actually bought it. Because by the time you sell it in Leone, convert it into dollars, I'm just speaking what they're going through. I mean, by the time you buy it, you sell it in Leone, convert it into dollars. Maybe the $10 which you bought that product can no longer give you the money you're going to get in Leone, can no longer get you the $10 that you actually bought the product. So that's why sometimes you can see some of these adjustments. But when we have the Consumer Protection Commission functioning, then they can look at all those figures. We're doing it ourselves. We are engaging with the major, in fact, what we try to do is segregate this price monitoring at two levels, one with the importers and then in the market. Of course, we have our trade monitors, but the truth is the number of trade monitors we have is very, very small, and they cannot be in all places at the same time. So some of these unscrupulous businesses, like you rightly mentioned, are there. They want to take advantage of it. I mean, even when we have sometimes problems with petrol while we're trying to negotiate with the importers what the price should be, you have people who then say, oh, petrol, you've seen me in the streets going out there to tell them you have to sell, So with all of this, you're seeing that, I mean, no less a person but the minister coming down to the streets to talk to them and show that the consumers get the product. I think it's a feat that you can only see in the ministry that is really ready to treat their mandate very seriously. I'm sure maybe the way it's happening all across, especially in areas where we are not, I'm sure consumers in those areas are actually feeling the pinch of some of the rogue businesses. But what we're trying to do is, with the establishment of this commission and with the capacity we intend to give them, and that's why we're talking to all the partners who are in the space who are interested in what is happening with trade, with the economy, that at a point like this, supporting the Consumer Protection Commission is going to make a whole lot of sense, because once we give them the capacity, they'll be able to be at so many places, and I'm sure they'll be able to do the work that we're talking about. They'll be looking at the quality of products. In fact, what we're trying to do with the Sierra Leone Standards Bureau is to try to introduce metrication, the metric system, into the measurements of goods. So instead of you going to buy rice again by cup, we're going to introduce buying it in kilograms. So when you go, the small business there should be able to have a small scale to measure the rice that you've come to buy in kilograms and be able to sell to you, rather than just selling by cup. I mean, all of that we're doing is to ensure that, and it's not only with goods, even with services. I mean, there are a couple of consumer protection issues around how the telecoms are treating consumers. We're going to look into all of that. Your orange money, your AFI money, just in case something happens to you. You don't have any legal contract with any of these companies that are actually doing these things. We're looking at all of those things to make sure that even when somebody passes away, somebody is able to access the money that he has in his wallet, in his mobile wallet. I mean, those are all consumer protection issues that we're going to look at. The quality of products, the value for the product that you're paying for, so that when you go out there and really give 2 millions, you should be able to get a good that's worth 2 millions, not less.
All right. Let's run through a few messages quickly, Mr. Minister. Eddie Grant is saying we're not food sufficient and we are exporting the little we have through smuggling. Is it not weird? All right. So many messages this morning. We can be able to export effectively to OECD countries if we enhance the AGOW requirements to standardize our products like palm oil, gari, granules, etc. Edgar Amara is saying. Ed Grant is saying you can't tell a democratically elected government. Okay, that is a response to be honest, Mr. Minister. From the layman's point of view, there's nothing good to write home about the ministry. The cost of living is key to us, the normal citizens. I mean, regards against Mr. Minister, don't you think it's necessary to be doing a weekly press briefing for the public, because all these good things you're outlining are not known to the public? Hassan Jallo is saying, Mr. Minister, all this you're saying is not impacting in the country. Why the value of the dollar is appreciating? Yoki Musa is saying, talking about exporting goods to other countries, did Sierra Leone have a production that export goods to other countries? I have never seen my country export goods to other country. Our government relies on other countries to bring their goods and services to Sierra Leone. Let me take 3 more messages. We have so many of them. Mr. Minister, why the uncontrollable increase in prices? You buy items today at a certain price, you go to buy that item again, it's gone up. Abubakar Rashid the same. And Hassan Jallo is saying, why the neighboring countries are doing well than Sierra Leone, and you still blaming Russia and Ukraine war. The final message is from Ibrahim J. Oscar saying, that's good to be selling by kilogram. These are few messages we'll take, Mr. Minister, because of time. I know you said you have a meeting you have to run to. So with all of these concerns from the public, how are we ensuring as a government through the ministry that some of these things, the impact, I mean, that they are felt by the ordinary Sierra Leoneans who go to the market every now and then to buy food stuff?
This is what we can do as a ministry to help develop the business and the industry potential of the country. And the impact, of course, is there. I mean, like the person was comparing Sierra Leone and neighboring countries. You all saw the videos of Liberians stranding in queues to buy rice. That is not happening in Sierra Leone. I mean, except if we're saying that, oh, well, maybe that was happening in Liberia in another universe. But if you take a look at what is happening, I mean, there has been instances when we've seen people who prefer to come by in Sierra Leone. If you go to Guinea, even the cement that we're talking about, the dollar equivalent of what cement is sold in in Liberia is, sorry, in Guinea and even Liberia is less. That's why you're not seeing cement coming from Guinea into Sierra Leone or cement coming from Liberia into Sierra Leone, because if you come, you're going to lose. If you check how much cement is sold in Guinea, it's far more than it's sold in Sierra Leone. But this is all part of what we've tried to do to encourage this level of manufacturing. And you've seen what was potentially going to happen to Leone. We came, we propped them up, we supported the new management, and today they are producing. They are now producing even the 42.5R, the highest grade of cement that is being imported into this country. So you will see that broadly, the world is becoming difficult, and those who are dreaming that it's going to get better, if you're going to think that because you bought something 10,000 leones last year, you're going to buy it 5,000 leones in the future, I'm sure the trend has not shown that. You know, so I think we all need to be guided by some of those things. There is so much we're trying to do. I mean, if a country has not done a whole lot over the years, and now we are trying to do something, you realize that it's going to take time with all this concerted effort to actually be able to put together those things. And I'll agree with the person who says that maybe not much of what we've achieved is actually in the public domain. I think we've dug our heads so much into the mud, working, trying to see how we achieve some of these things. The PR stint, of course, is going to come up, and I can only assure that we'll try to go around all of these industries. Those who are saying that they are not seeing exporting, we're going to get them on video. I'm not sure if the AYV will be ready to go with us on that work. We'll be doing an industry tour to really look at what we've been able to achieve, so that when it comes on video, when it's talked about in the media, you can actually see that, yes, we've tried to do a whole lot.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Minister. It's been a pleasure having you here this morning.